Mommy, did you really kill Daddy?
3 years. That's how long Sarah Williams spent in prison for murdering her husband. 3 years of cold prison walls. 3 years of being called a monster. 3 years of watching her daughter grow up through a glass partition. The police said she killed the man she loved. The newspapers called her a murderer. Even her own daughter eventually asked the question that broke her heart. "Mummy, did you really kill Daddy?" But the question is, was Sarah the true murderer, or was she innocent? Watch this video to the end. Let's find out what really happened. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this video to your friends, and tell us what you think about Sarah and her ordeal in the comment section. So, the first time Sarah met Daniel, she was 19 years old. Daniel wasn't rich. He wasn't handsome in the way movie stars are handsome, but he was kind. The kind of man who would walk an extra mile just to make sure she got home safely. The kind of man who remembered the little things. The kind of man who made promises and kept them. But for 7 years, they built a life together. Not a perfect life, but a real one. They survived months when there wasn't enough money for rent, survived heartbreak after losing their first unborn child, survived days when all they had for dinner was bread and tea. But through everything, they stayed together. When their daughter Emma was born, Sarah cried for hours, not because she was in pain, but because she finally believed life was becoming kind to them. For the first time in years, she felt safe, she felt happy, she felt complete. She had no idea that happiness was about to be taken from her. 3 days before Daniel died, he came home carrying a small box. Inside was a silver necklace, nothing expensive, just a tiny heart-shaped pendant. Sarah laughed. "What's this for?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "Do I need a reason to buy something for my wife?" She wore it immediately. That necklace would later become the last gift she ever received from him. On the night everything happened, it was raining, a heavy storm, the kind that shakes windows and keeps children awake. Emma had fallen asleep between her parents after complaining about the thunder. Around midnight, Daniel got out of bed. He said he was going downstairs to check a strange noise coming from the back door. Sarah barely opened her eyes. "Be careful," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "I'll be right back." Several minutes passed. Sarah thought he was probably checking the generator or fixing something outside. Then she heard a crashing sound followed by silence. The kind of silence that feels wrong. The kind that makes your stomach tighten before your mind understands why. She got out of bed, walked downstairs, and saw something that would haunt her forever. Daniel was lying on the floor motionless, blood spreading beneath him, his eyes open, his body still. For a moment, Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, couldn't move. She dropped to her knees, shaking him, calling his name, begging him to wake up. But Daniel was already gone. The neighbors later said they heard her screams from outside. One woman claimed she had never heard pain like that in her entire life. By sunrise, police officers had arrived. The house was filled with investigators, photographs, questions, whispers. Sarah sat wrapped in a blanket, unable to stop crying. She thought the police were there to find whoever did this. She thought they would help her. She thought they would find the person who took her husband away. Instead, one detective kept asking the same question, again and again and again. "Mrs. Williams, when was the last time you saw your husband alive?" Sarah answered through tears. "Around midnight." The detective stared at her notebook, then looked up. "And nobody else was in the house?" Sarah slowly shook her head. "No." The detective exchanged a glance with another officer, a glance Sarah didn't understand. Not yet, but she would. Because while Sarah was mourning her husband, the police had already begun to wonder something else. What if the killer wasn't outside the house? What if the killer was sitting right in front of them? For the first few days after Daniel's death, Sarah barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him lying on that cold floor. Every time she heard a door creak, she remembered the sound of that terrible night. The funeral came quickly, too quickly. One moment Daniel was alive. The next, she was standing beside a wooden casket, staring at the face of the man she thought she would grow old with. Their daughter Emma kept asking the same question: "When is Daddy coming home?" Sarah didn't know how to answer, so she simply held her little girl and cried. The day of the funeral should have been about saying goodbye. Instead, it became the day Sarah realized she was completely alone. Daniel's mother refused to sit beside her. Her brothers wouldn't look at her. Relatives who once called her daughter suddenly spoke to her like a stranger. At first, she thought they were just grieving. Then she overheard a conversation, a whisper, a sentence she would never forget. "I don't care what anyone says." A woman lowered her voice. "That girl knows more than she's telling us." Sarah froze. Her heart dropped. The words hit harder than she expected, because for the first time she understood. People weren't looking at her like a widow. They were looking at her like a suspect. As the weeks passed, the rumors spread. Some people claimed the marriage wasn't as happy as it seemed. Others insisted they had argued recently. A few even invented stories that never happened. In the eyes of the community, facts no longer mattered. The story had already been written. A husband was dead, a wife had survived, and for many people, that was enough. Soon the whispers became stares. The stares became accusations. Neighbors stopped greeting her. Friends stopped calling. Parents told their children not to visit Emma. One afternoon, Sarah picked up her daughter from school and found Emma crying in the back seat. "What happened?" she asked. Emma wiped her eyes. A long silence followed. Then the little girl spoke, a sentence no child should ever have to say. "They said my mommy killed my daddy." Sarah felt something inside her break. Not crack, break. She pulled the car over and held her daughter while both of them cried. Emma was only 8 years old. 8, and already carrying a burden no child could understand. But the worst was still coming. A month later, detectives asked Sarah to return to the station. Again. The questioning lasted hours. The same questions, over and over. "Where were you? What did you hear? Did you and Daniel argue? Was there another man? Did he have life insurance? Did he ever threaten to leave you?" The questions felt less like an investigation and more like an accusation. Sarah answered every one of them, truthfully, patiently, exhausted. But nothing seemed to matter. The detectives had become interested in a theory that grew stronger every time they failed to find another suspect. One afternoon, after nearly 6 hours of questioning, an investigator leaned forward. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but what he said shattered her. "Sarah," he paused, "help us understand why you killed your husband." Killed. The word echoed inside her head. Killed. Not what happened, not what did you see, not who might have done this. Killed. As though the conclusion had already been reached. Sarah stared at him, unable to speak, unable to breathe, unable to understand how her life had become this nightmare. The detective slid a folder across the table. Inside were crime scene photographs, Daniel's photographs. Sarah immediately looked away. Tears filled her eyes. The detective didn't stop. "We believe this wasn't a burglary." He tapped the folder. "We think this happened inside the family." Sarah shook her head. "No. We believe you're lying." "No. We think you're protecting yourself." "No." The room fell silent. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Sarah buried her face in her hands. Not because she was guilty, but because she finally realized something terrifying. The people investigating her husband's death no longer seemed interested in finding the truth. They seemed interested in proving she was the killer. And once that happens, every answer starts sounding like a lie. Every tear looks fake. Every memory becomes suspicious. 3 days later, at exactly 6:17 in the morning, someone knocked on her front door. She opened it and saw 4 police officers standing outside. Behind her, Emma was still asleep. One officer unfolded a document. His voice was emotionless. "Sarah Williams, you are arrested for the murder of your husband." The world stopped. She couldn't hear anything else, couldn't think, couldn't move. Only one thought remained. How was she supposed to explain this to her daughter? As the officers placed handcuffs on her wrists, Sarah looked toward the hallway, toward Emma's bedroom, and for the first time since Daniel died, she was even more afraid for her daughter than she was for herself. The handcuffs felt cold, colder than the rain, colder than the jail cell she would later sleep in. But none of that was what Sarah remembered most. What she remembered most was Emma's face. The little girl had woken up when she heard the commotion, still wearing her pink pajamas, still half asleep. She walked into the hallway, rubbing her eyes. Then she saw the police officers. Then she saw the handcuffs. Then she saw her mother crying. At first, Emma didn't understand. Children rarely do, not immediately. Then one of the officers gently guided Sarah toward the door, and suddenly Emma realized something terrible was happening. "Mommy!" Sarah turned. The sound of her daughter's voice almost destroyed her. "Mommy, where are you going?" Sarah opened her mouth. Nothing came out. How do you explain something like this to a child? How do you tell an 8-year-old girl that the world thinks her mother is a murderer? How do you explain that you don't even know when you'll come home? Emma began running toward her. One officer stepped aside. The little girl wrapped her arms around Sarah's waist and started crying. Not loud cries, not screams. The kind of crying that comes from pure fear. The kind that breaks your heart because it's so helpless. "Please don't go!" Sarah fell to her knees despite the handcuffs. Tears streamed down her face. She kissed Emma's forehead again and again and again. "I love you! Mommy, please don't leave me! I love you so much! Please!" Sarah felt her chest tightening. Every instinct inside her wanted to grab her daughter and never let go. But she couldn't, because the officers were already pulling her away, and because the law had decided she no longer belonged at home. As Sarah was led outside, she looked back one final time. Emma was standing in the doorway, crying, shaking, terrified. The image would follow Sarah for years, years. Inside the prison vehicle, Sarah finally broke down. Not because she was going to jail, not because she had been accused of murder, but because her daughter was now facing the world alone. The prison gates closed behind her with a heavy metallic sound, a sound that felt like the end of her life. The first night was the hardest. The cell was small. The mattress was thin. The walls smelled of damp concrete. Sleep never came. Every time Sarah closed her eyes, she imagined Emma calling for her. Every time she woke up, she expected to find herself back home, back in her own bed, back in her old life. But reality was waiting every morning, cold, cruel, unchanging. Weeks became months, months became a year, then another. The case moved painfully slowly. Court dates were postponed, witnesses failed to appear, documents went missing, hearings were rescheduled. Each delay stole another piece of Sarah's life. Meanwhile, the outside world continued moving without her. Emma celebrated birthdays without her mother, lost baby teeth without her mother, started new school years without her mother. Sarah missed everything, every single moment. The only thing she had were occasional visits, and even those became harder. The first time Emma visited the prison, Sarah almost didn't recognize her. Children grow quickly, too quickly, especially when you're trapped behind bars. Emma sat across from her, clutching a small drawing, a picture of 3 people holding hands: Sarah, Daniel, Emma. The way they used to be. "I made this for you." Sarah took the drawing carefully, as if it were made of glass. She stared at it for several seconds, then started crying. Because in that drawing, Daniel was still alive. In that drawing, they were still a family. In that drawing, none of this had happened. Emma reached across the table. "Mummy, Sarah wiped her tears. "Yes, sweetheart?" The little girl hesitated, then asked a question that shattered what remained of Sarah's heart. "Mommy."
Mommy,
Another
did you
pause.
really kill Daddy?
"Did you really kill Daddy?" For a moment, Sarah couldn't breathe. The room disappeared, the noise disappeared, everything disappeared. Because this was the one person whose belief mattered more than anyone else's. Her daughter. And even she was beginning to doubt. Not because Emma wanted to, but because the world had been whispering the same lie into her ears for years. Sarah grabbed her daughter's hands, tightly, desperately. "Look at me." Emma looked up. "I loved your father." Sarah's voice trembled. "I loved him more than anything." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I would never hurt him." Emma stared at her for several seconds, then nodded, and hugged her through the barrier as best she could. But when the visit ended and Emma walked away, Sarah sat alone, watching her daughter disappear down the corridor. And for the first time since her arrest, a terrifying thought entered her mind. What if she never gets out? What if Emma grows up believing a lie? What if the truth never comes? Because somewhere outside those prison walls, the real story of Daniel's death was still waiting to be discovered. And a single forgotten piece of evidence was about to change everything. By the third year of Sarah's imprisonment, something strange had happened. People had stopped talking about her. The news cameras were gone. The headlines had disappeared. The neighbors who once called her a monster had moved on with their lives. The world had forgotten her. But Sarah couldn't forget. Every morning she woke up with the same thought. Every night she went to sleep with the same prayer. Please let the truth come out. Sometimes hope was all keeping her alive. And sometimes even hope felt exhausted. One rainy afternoon, Sarah was called to meet her lawyer. At first, she assumed it was another postponement, another delay, another reason to spend more time waiting. But the moment she entered the visitation room, she noticed something different. Her lawyer wasn't carrying the usual expression of defeat. Instead, he looked interested, focused, almost excited. Sarah sat down. What happened? The lawyer opened a folder. For several seconds, he simply stared at the papers. Then he looked up. "Sarah," his voice was careful, "I think we've found something." Her heart immediately started racing. "What?" The lawyer slid several photographs across the table. Crime scene photographs. Photographs Sarah had spent years trying to forget. What am I looking at? The lawyer pointed to a corner of the image, near the back entrance, a section investigators had barely discussed during the trial. "You see this?" Sarah leaned forward. At first, she saw nothing unusual. Then she noticed it. A muddy footprint. Not one, several, leading away from the house. Her brow furrowed. "I don't understand." The lawyer took a deep breath. Neither did the police. Months earlier, a new forensic consultant had reviewed the evidence, not because anyone believed Sarah was innocent, but because the case had become part of a training review for unresolved investigations. The consultant wasn't trying to prove Sarah's innocence. He wasn't trying to prove her guilt. He was simply reviewing the evidence from the beginning. And that's when he found something disturbing. The footprints near the back door had never been properly analyzed, never measured, never compared, never investigated. They had simply been photographed and ignored. Ignored because investigators were already focused on Sarah. Ignored because once they decided she was the killer, everything else became background noise. The consultant kept digging. Then he found another problem: the estimated timeline of Daniel's death. The prosecution's entire theory depended on the belief that Daniel died shortly after leaving his bedroom. But newer forensic analysis suggested something different. Something very different. Daniel may have survived much longer than investigators originally believed. Long enough for someone else to enter the property. long enough for someone else to leave, long enough to completely destroy the prosecution's version of events. For the first time in years, Sarah felt something she barely recognized: hope. Dangerous hope. The kind that scares you because you've been disappointed too many times. The kind that whispers, maybe this nightmare isn't over. Maybe it's finally ending. Weeks later, the forensic consultant discovered something else. Something far more significant. Security footage. Not from Sarah's house, not from a nearby home, from a warehouse several streets away. The footage had existed the entire time, buried in old records, never requested by investigators, never reviewed, never presented in court. The camera captured a narrow road connected to the neighborhood, and on the night Daniel died, a vehicle appeared, a dark vehicle, moving through the area at an unusual hour. The timestamp matched a critical period investigators had ignored. The footage wasn't perfect. It didn't show a face. It didn't identify a suspect, but it proved something important. Someone else had been there. Someone investigators never looked for. When Sarah heard the news, she couldn't speak. For years, she had screamed the same truth. For years, nobody listened. Now the evidence was beginning to speak for her, and evidence is harder to ignore. That evening, back inside her cell, Sarah sat alone on her bed. For the first time in years, she wasn't crying. Instead, she stared at Emma's old drawing, the picture of 3 people holding hands. The edges were worn, the paper was faded, but she had protected it like treasure. Sarah ran her fingers across the drawing, then whispered something she hadn't dared say in a very long time. "I'm coming home." But outside the prison walls, another person was becoming nervous, very nervous. Because the deeper investigators looked into Daniel's death, the closer they were getting to a secret that remained buried for years. A secret someone had worked very hard to keep hidden. And soon, that secret would have a name. The man nobody suspected. For 3 years, the investigation had revolved around one person: Sarah. Her phone calls, her marriage, her movements, her tears. Her life had been examined under a microscope, every memory dissected, every word questioned, every mistake magnified. Meanwhile, the real answers had been hiding in plain sight, because while everyone was looking at the widow, nobody was looking at Daniel. The breakthrough came from something surprisingly ordinary: a stack of old financial records, boxes of paperwork that had been collected years earlier and forgotten. One investigator spent days reviewing them, then days became weeks, and somewhere in those records he found a name that appeared over and over again: a man named Victor Hale. At first, there was nothing remarkable about him. He wasn't family, he wasn't a neighbor, he wasn't Sarah's friend, he wasn't even someone mentioned during the initial investigation. Yet Daniel had been communicating with him constantly during the months before his death. Phone calls, messages, meetings, transfers of money. The deeper investigators dug, the stranger things became. Daniel had been hiding something significant, something he had never told Sarah. When detectives interviewed Daniel's former co-workers, pieces of a disturbing picture began to emerge. Months before his death, Daniel had discovered irregularities at work, money that wasn't where it should be, records that didn't match, transactions that seemed designed to disappear. At first, he believed it was a mistake. Then he realized it wasn't. Someone was stealing. And Daniel had started asking questions. Dangerous questions. The kind of questions that make guilty people nervous. One former co-worker remembered a conversation vividly. Daniel seemed worried, distracted, unlike himself. The co-worker asked what was wrong. Daniel laughed it off. But before leaving, he said something unusual, something that suddenly seemed important. "If anything happens to me," he stopped, then shook his head. "Forget it." The co-worker never forgot it. Investigators followed the trail, the financial records, the messages, the meetings. Eventually, everything led back to Victor, the man no one had bothered investigating, the man who had somehow escaped attention while Sarah sat in prison. But proving suspicion and proving guilt are two different things. The investigators needed evidence, real evidence, something that could survive a courtroom, something undeniable, and then they found it. Among Daniel's old belongings was a damaged flash drive. For years, nobody had paid attention to it. It had been dismissed as irrelevant, just another item collected during the initial investigation, a forgotten piece of plastic sitting inside an evidence box. Until a forensic technician decided to examine it. What they recovered changed everything. Documents, emails, financial records, copies of internal reports. Daniel had been gathering evidence, quietly, carefully, methodically. He had been building a case, and buried among those files was a draft message, one that Daniel never got the chance to send. The message contained a warning about Victor, a warning that suggested Daniel intended to expose everything within days, maybe even hours, before he died. When Sarah's lawyer received the report, he immediately requested an emergency meeting. Sarah sat across from him, her hands trembling. That night, Sarah lay awake in her cell. She thought about Daniel, about their first date, about their wedding, about Emma, about everything they had lost. Then she thought about something else, something she had almost forgotten how to imagine. Freedom. But freedom was not guaranteed because Victor denied everything. He denied knowing anything about Daniel's death, denied the allegations, denied the evidence, denied the motive. And when the case returned to court, a battle was about to begin. A battle that would determine whether Sarah spent the rest of her life as a convicted killer or finally walked out of prison a free woman. And in that courtroom, one witness would reveal a secret that nobody saw coming. The courtroom was packed, not because people cared about Sarah, not because they felt sorry for her, but because people love a spectacle. And this case had become one. For years, she had been known as only one thing: the woman who killed her husband. People had repeated those words so often that they sounded like a fact, as if a judge had spoken them, as if evidence had proven them, as if they were true. But today, for the first time, the story was changing. Sarah sat quietly beside her lawyer. The prison uniform hung loosely on her body. 3 years behind bars had changed her. The bright, hopeful woman who once laughed easily was gone. The woman sitting in that courtroom looked older than her age, thinner, sadder, tired in a way sleep could never fix. Across the room sat Emma, now 11 years old, no longer the little girl in pink pajamas, no longer the child who waited by the window for her mother to come home. She had grown up while Sarah sat in a prison cell. 3 birthdays, 3 Christmases, 3 Mother's Days, gone forever. Time stolen by an accusation. The hearing began. Witnesses testified, experts spoke, evidence was reviewed. Hours passed. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The forensic consultant took the stand, the same man who had reopened the evidence, the same man who noticed what everyone else ignored. For nearly 2 hours, he carefully dismantled the original investigation, piece by piece, fact by fact, mistake by mistake. The forgotten footprints, the ignored timeline, the overlooked surveillance footage, the damaged flash drive. Every revelation struck the courtroom like a hammer, and with every answer, the original case against Sarah became weaker. Then the prosecutor asked a question meant to save the case. "Are you saying Sarah Williams could not have committed this crime?" The consultant paused, then replied, "No." The room became silent. Sarah felt her stomach drop. The prosecutor smiled. But the consultant wasn't finished. He adjusted his glasses, then continued. I'm saying there is no reliable evidence proving she did. Silence. The kind of silence that fills an entire room. The kind that forces people to confront an uncomfortable truth. For 3 years, Sarah had been imprisoned, and now one expert was saying the evidence had never truly proven her guilt. But the biggest shock was still coming. The defense called its final witness, a former associate of Victor Hale, a man who had remained silent for years, a man carrying a secret so heavy it had nearly destroyed him. When he entered the witness box, nobody knew what he was about to say, not even Sarah. The man took a deep breath. His hands trembled. His voice shook. Then he spoke, and the courtroom changed forever. He testified that weeks before Daniel's death, Victor had become increasingly desperate. The financial misconduct was close to being exposed. Daniel was asking questions, dangerous questions, questions that threatened everything. According to the witness, Victor repeatedly complained about Daniel, repeatedly expressed fear, repeatedly discussed ways to stop him. At first, nobody took him seriously, until one particular conversation. A conversation the witness said he would never forget, because Victor had looked him directly in the eye and said, "If Daniel keeps digging, he's going to become a problem nobody can fix." The courtroom froze. The prosecutor objected immediately. Arguments erupted, voices rose. The judge restored order. But the damage had already been done. For the first time, another narrative existed, a believable narrative, one supported by evidence, one supported by motive, one supported by facts. Sarah looked down. Her hands were shaking, not because she was afraid, because for the first time in years, she felt seen. The hearing stretched late into the evening. Then came closing arguments. The prosecution fought hard, but something had changed. Everyone could feel it. The certainty was gone. The confidence was gone. The case that once seemed simple now looked deeply flawed. The judge announced a recess before delivering the ruling. Those minutes felt longer than the 3 years Sarah had spent in prison. She couldn't sit still, couldn't think, couldn't breathe properly. Every possible outcome raced through her mind. What if she lost? What if none of this mattered? What if she never left prison? Then she heard a sound, a familiar voice, the voice she had missed every day for 3 years. "Mommy!" Emma, running, crying, smiling. Sarah collapsed to her knees as her daughter threw her arms around her. Neither of them cared about the courtroom anymore. Neither cared who was watching. Neither cared about anything except the fact that they were together. Finally, after years of separation, after years of suffering,